and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. US President Donald Trump has announced a new wave of tariffs targeting non-US manufacturers. The three tariffs which could possibly hurt India would be the 200% duty on pharmaceutical imports, 50% duty on copper and 10% blanket tariff on BRICS nations. India's pharmaceutical exports to America are its highest amongst other nations at $9,000 million, while our copper exports stand at $300 million. India's Union Minister G. Kishan Reddy has said that India is assessing the impact of the tariffs announced by Trump, while sources tell us that the impact of copper exports will be minimal. While India being on the verge of a mini trade deal with America, will there be respite on the pharmaceutical tariff warning that has been issued by the US President? Let's start our conversation. Joining me on the telecast is Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee. Ambassador Mukherjee, what do you make of these fresh set of warnings that have been issued by President Trump and particularly about the pharma sector? 31% of India's pharmaceutical exports travel to America. America is the hugest market for India in terms of pharmaceuticals. This is going to be a massive impact if 200% tariffs are going to be imposed on Indian exports. How is India going to navigate through all of it?
It's not just India, Megha, that has to navigate through it. The United States also has to navigate through it. There is an inherent contradiction in President Trump's pronouncement that on one hand, he says that we are very, very close to a mini trade deal with India. Their negotiators are here in Delhi. Even the BBC, which is chronically hostile to India, this morning announced that the trade deal is almost final. So if you're going to have a trade deal, a mini trade deal, on areas that are of fundamental importance to both the United States and India, how on earth can you then, on the other hand, say that you're going to impose 200% pharmaceuticals, which is covered in the mini trade deal, or on copper, or for that matter, this whole business of BRICS. This BRICS is an imaginary problem in the mind of President Trump. BRICS is a grouping that has not announced that it's going to reverse the dollar. BRICS is a grouping which is a natural corollary to a collapsing world order led by President Trump himself. The fact that the UN Security Council is paralyzed has meant that other groupings have come up, G20, BRICS, etc. How on earth can he individually start mini trade deals with member countries of BRICS, including India, and on the other hand threaten us with 10% tariffs? It's a little bit like Mohammed bin Tughlaq, who said that he would move the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad because the people in Delhi were not good to him. I mean, this is not the way that one negotiates with President of the United States. I, for one, Megha, would not lose any sleep, but then Dr. Sharad Kohli knows more than me. I would say what Trump really wants is that trade deal with India. That he is definitely going to get. What Trump really wants is for us to buy large amounts of defense ammunition and other expensive equipment, which we will do to a certain extent, depending on our own security interests. He wants money from us. That's all that interests him. All this tariff business, which he uses like a magic wand, one day reverses it, then moves it forward. It's 200% one day, it's 10% the other day. He's just making America and himself ridiculous in the eyes of the world. I hope he understands that people all over the world are laughing at him. I would not waste too much sleep on it, honestly. Thank you.
I have with me Andrew Latham. Andrew, what do you make of these fresh set of tariff threats that have been issued by US President Donald Trump? Is he going to make good on them, or is there going to be back and forth that will happen as we have seen in the other tariff threats, this tariff war that he has waged against countries all across the globe? Is there weight to the tariff threat on the copper and the pharmaceuticals that he has announced just yesterday?
With President Trump, on any given minute of any given hour, on any given day, there's one of three logics to these tariffs, and they are all mutually incompatible. Sometimes he sees them as revenue streams. plain and simple. Sometimes he sees them as bargaining chips to get the best possible bilateral trade deal. And sometimes he actually thinks, I think in his own kind of twisted way, he thinks that he's going to onshore all of this, in this case with India, pharmaceutical manufacturing. Those three things are very different. If you in fact use them as leverage, you do away with the revenue stream part of things. And you can see how these three things do not fit together, not in any logical sense. And we're not dealing with logic here. The second thing I would say that's relevant here is with respect to BRICS. BRICS is, in the minds of Beijing and Moscow, it's the DNA of an alternative world order, world political economic order, as the American rules-based international order fragments, fractures, and begins to fall apart. And that's been going on pre-Trump, but Trump has certainly put his foot to the accelerator on this. But there's no internal coherence to the BRICS. Delhi and Beijing are not on the same page. They're simply not. They're not in favor. India is not in favor of de-dollarization. Yeah. India is in favor of getting the best possible deal it can within the remnants of the rules-based international order, which until 5 minutes ago was called the liberal international order. Founded in 1945, globalized in 1991. India has benefited from it. So there's that. And then in terms of a bilateral deal between India and the United States, I think the ambassador is correct, although I would add a geopolitical dimension to that. It's not just money. Trump and his fellow travelers want to wean India off dependence on the Russians and their military equipment and spare parts and all the rest of it. They want India squarely in the American camp. Economically, that's going to be a bit challenging, but geopolitically, that's a no-brainer.
Of course.
Complicated only by this one concept, which I'll put on the table, and then I'll be quiet. Multi-alignment. We're now not in a unipolar world or a bipolar world. We're in a multipolar world, and within that multipolar world, there's this thing called multi-alignment. Countries are sometimes on Team USA. That same country can sometimes be on Team PRC and sometimes be on Team Russia. It depends on the issue. We're no longer in an era of blocks, fixed blocks. We're in an era of multi-alignment, and that complicates the picture just a little bit.
Okay, yes. Dr. Sharad Kohli, from the economic point of view, how is the fresh tariff threat on pharmaceutical industry going to impact India?
Good evening, Megha, and good morning to my friends from America, and of course, Ambassador Mukherjee and NewsX viewers. I think President Trump is trying to paint the whole world with a single brush. And I was saying I've got a stomach ache. I went to my doctor. I said, "Hi, doctor, can you please prescribe me some tariffs? I've got a stomach ache, and I hope this can be cured by tariffs," because I think tariffs is the end solution of everything. He finds BRICS objectionable. He says tariffs. He says, "I stopped India and Pakistan. We'll do a lot of trade with you. Come on, don't fight." I mean, he keeps giving that statement. Iran, Israel, he said, "Oh, we'll do business with you. Don't fight." He feels he's a businessman to the core. I appreciate and I respect that. But then to paint the whole world with one single brush, that's my first point. My second point is, you use the word threats. Now, I differentiate here from threats to the real tariffs, because so far, no real tariffs have got into effect. It's been 2nd April, and we are today into 9th of July. So there were threats, there were reductions, there were postponements, and there were fresh dates. So it's like, in Hindi you say Tariq pe Tariq, date after date, which keeps going on. So I think President Trump from inside realizes the fact that when these tariffs come into effect, effectively it's going to harm America more than harming the country. He probably feels that the country would be at a loss. That's why he uses the word threat, that you'll face these many. But what he forgets is that the US Treasury may end up collecting some more revenue because of the tariffs. But what about the poor people of America? When they go and buy pharmaceuticals, when they go and buy copper, let's come down to the items we are talking about today. When they go and buy these generic drugs, India, China, they supply generic drugs. He's talking of, exorbitantly high amount of tariffs on that. How do you think American Medicare, Medi-Air is going to work? Can the Treasury afford this kind of bill the drugs land there with that kind of tariffs? Can copper, India is doing about $360 billion of copper to the US. Fine, we are all right. We do total $2 billion of copper export, 360, about 17% goes to the US, that's fine. But 40% of the drugs, there are a lot of companies that I know in Gujarat, Maharashtra, and other places who are solely exporting to US. And, let me be very fair and honest. They may be exporting, they may be completely dependent on US exports, fine. But do you think American public, American people, American import system, American economy, American medical system, the whole ecosystem, do you think that is not dependent on these exports? The answer is they are. So it's a situation at both ends. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this has been assessed by President Trump or not, but I would like to reiterate that you cannot paint the whole world with one single brush, Megha.
I also have with me Mitali Nicole. Mitali, how do you view the situation right now? Do you think India has a cause to worry? Also because, Trump, as has been mentioned by my other panelists, keeps going back and forth. We also understand these letters threatening tariffs to about 12 to 14 countries have already been issued, India being excluded because he says we are close to signing a deal with India. But the date has shifted because earlier the tariffs were going to be imposed on 9th of July. We have already passed that, and now the fresh date has been issued to be 1st of August. So how do we assess the seriousness with which President Trump makes these sweeping statements?
So, Megha, actually, I'm in the capital. I mean, almost like the capital of the financial heart of the US today. I'm in New York. And I've been speaking to a lot of political analysts. I've been speaking to a lot of economic analysts here in New York, and also looking at, the stock market reactions to what the president has been saying. And honestly, the stock market has not moved here at all. The fact that he made these announcements yesterday and day before, he sent off letters to Japan and South Korea talking about 25% tariffs. Then he announced 50% tariffs on copper. Then he said, we're going to also do onshoring for pharma. And there has been no movement at all in the FTSE 100. The FTSE 100 is continuing as it is. The NASDAQ is trading as it is. There's been no real jump or reduction in the stock market rates. Now, that's because the stock markets and investors and analysts here have factored in the fact that he's going to come in, he's going to make sweeping statements, but nothing is actually going to happen. And that's the expectation of the markets here now, because they're not just taking it with a pinch of salt, they're taking it with grains and bags of salt when he is making these kind of statements. And when I look at, like Dr. Sharad Kohli said, I've been going and actually like looking at the situation in terms of cost of living here in the US. And the cost of living has gone up in across major cities. I've been to Boston in this trip, I've been to New Jersey, and now I'm here in New York. And everywhere you go to a normal grocery store, and you see that the cost of living, the cost of basic items like eggs, milk, your everyday items has gone up almost between 10 to 15% in just the last 1 year. And people are talking about how hard it is for them, on an everyday basis to just survive. Medicines are one of the biggest expenses. And the one big beautiful bill that was just passed 3 days ago, it actually cuts Medicaid support for people. People have to prove that they're working for 80 hours a month, either working or studying or volunteering in government approved activities in order to access Medicaid. And that has already set back a number of people with long term health conditions, because a person with a long term health condition who's dependent on Medicaid cannot work, study, or volunteer. So in these situations, the cost of living has already gone up so much. People are highly dependent on the generic drugs that are coming not only from India, but from the rest of the world to the US. People are dependent on, Indian food items. People are importing, in many of the grocery stores that I visited, people are importing processed food items from India People are importing textiles from India, huge number of textiles, cheap textiles, like basic, clothing items. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about like,
Yeah.
so, in this situation, the trade deal is much more beneficial for the US than for India. We can find other markets, but they need us as a supplier.
Okay. All right. Coming back to you, Ambassador Mukherjee. So how do we find a way out of this quandary that President Trump has once again brought upon us? Also, I would like to understand, because we are yet to strike that. We were supposed to strike a full-fledged deal with America, and now there are whispers that it is not going to be a comprehensive deal. It is going to be just a mini deal, and the larger part of it may be only to save face, because 9th of July is already upon us. I don't know if the deal is going to be signed or not today, but the larger framework of it, and it's going to be structurized much into the months that are going to pass by in the future. And the key constraints perhaps for this deal are, number one, our resistance to opening up our agricultural and dairy markets. How do we are we right now in sync with America? What is exactly happening when these trade representatives are meeting and the officials are in Washington, and of course you said in New Delhi as well? What is the ideal way of striking a deal with the Trump administration and ensuring that the interests of our agriculturalists, the farmers, the dairy producers are kept intact? And this is something this is something that is not just peculiar to India. Japan and South Korea have raised similar issues, that their farmers are going to be heavily impacted because Trump is not leaving any room for negotiation and wanting these agricultural markets to open up, which is going to be detrimental to the farm economy.
Well, Megha, first of all, there is no comparison between Japan and South Korea and India, because Japan and South Korea are developed countries and have much more space to maneuver with the United States, which is a super developed country, than India, which is an emerging economy. Secondly, there is no common space between Trump and India, because Trump wants to march all over us, open up our economy, basically like colonial loot, take everything from us and give nothing in return. It is like the return of the good old British financial imperialism of the East India Company. Having gone through colonialism for 188 years, we are masters of the deal. We never intended to have a large deal with this bully. We are going to give him a small deal to get him off our backs. We need to get him off our backs because he's a huge nuisance for us. We will give him a little bit and he will give us a little bit. That's called the art of the mini deal. That's what he's going to get, and he will get it only when Prime Minister returns to India. There's no question of signing it until Prime Minister returns to India. He will get that deal. He will save his face with that deal, because if he doesn't get the deal with us, and as Dr. Sharad Kohli rightly pointed out, that 200% tariff on pharma is going to harm his MAGA supporters much more than we in India. We are poor people, we are used to poverty. He wants to push us back into poverty, no problem. We live here in unsanitized conditions, we don't have electricity, we don't have water, we are very poor people, we have been colonized, we are brown people, we are okay. It doesn't really matter to us what United States wants to do to us or not. And how long is Trump there for? We'll live it out. We lived through 188 years of British colonialism, we'll live through 3 more years of Trump. It's as simple as that. I am saying we have a mini deal, and as far as BRICS is concerned, he is trying to bully the Russians and the Chinese. We are just coming to it inadvertently because we are a member and we're going to host BRICS. He is not going to break up BRICS, and we are not going to de-dollarize as he is threatening. If we do de-dollarize, that will be a problem that will be taken up separately. There are people
again. We are not. I think BRICS as a bloc. I think while Russia has time and again proposed to degenerate the dollar, to de-dollarize the markets, India has not gone out in all-out support for it? Are we fearing something? Do we not want to upset United States? In fact, after Trump released that statement saying there are going to be 10% tariffs that are going to be imposed on BRICS nations, China and Russia, both of them have come out and clarified that we are not looking to have adverse trade relationship with America. In fact, Putin has a couple of times in the last 5 days even proposed that there is space for trade negotiations and trade to take place between America and Russia, which right now stands at zero. So obviously that's part of the larger geopolitical scenario that the West finds itself in. But again, coming back to you, Andrew, what's the sentiment on the ground of the people of America, an average American? As Mitali says, the cost of living has risen exponentially to about 10 to 15%. What do people feel about this tariff war waged by their president?
Yeah, well, first of all, people resent the Democrats as much as the Republicans in terms of cost of living increases. It really began with Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, misnamed as it was. That's been a problem now for 6 years at least. Secondly, the sentiment on the ground, at least in the circles I move in, is that Trump doesn't know what he's doing. On any given day, on any given hour, different logics kick in with him. I think something that's being underappreciated on the panel, though, is that this is not just about economics. It is about economics, but it's not just about economics. When Trump sees BRICS, he sees it through a distorted lens. And that distorted lens, it's an enemy, an adversarial bloc. And it's not. There are so many internal tensions and differences within that bloc. India and Russia and China and Brazil are simply not on the same page with 9/10 of the agenda of this thing called BRICS. And there's like 27 members of BRICS now, but you can't have 27 letters in an acronym. It would be unpronounceable. So the sentiment on the ground, at least in the largely democratic circles that I move in, although I'm an immigrant to this country, I'm Canadian, so I have a weird take on what's going on here. But they're not favorably disposed toward Trump. The MAGA brigade is, but they're divided, right? On the one hand, there are MAGA people who think the United States should reassert its dominance geopolitically. It should be the second unipolar moment. And there are others who say, we don't care what goes on in India or Brazil or Japan or anywhere else. We care about what goes on within our borders. And that's all we care about. And those two factions are at loggerheads. And Trump is having a very hard time, to mix metaphors, riding that particular balking bronco. He doesn't know how to do it. I like the ambassador's notion of the art of the mini deal. I thought that was actually quite clever and quite apropos. He's trying to put out brush fires all over the place with these mini deals. I have to say, though, I think at the end of the day, he looks at the globe. He knows China's never going to be a friend. He knows Russia's never going to be a friend. And he sees India as a friend 50, 60, or 70% of the time, but with real differences when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to economics. And the bridge there, which the ambassador talked about, is the defense industry, right? Trump would really love to sell F-35s and in the future F-47s and all the rest of it. And if he's using tariffs as leverage to do that deal, that mini deal, I think that's what's going on there.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Dr. Curley, so again, to diversify our sources of imports, whether we are buying our weapons from Russia or America or France, and also the Make in India Defense Initiative that has been launched by the government of India. It is a long gestation period. It is going to take time to be able to be completely self-sufficient, and as Andrew said, that America needs the money, needs the dollars that India continues to spend on buying those Boeings and the GE engines, and therefore it's a quid pro quo. But do you think this is going to be an intensive enough to persuade Trump to let go of desiring opening up of our agriculture market, our dairy market, and even imposing these heavy tariffs on the pharma industry?
Well, Megha, a possessive lover, a very possessive lover. He's a possessive lover of India. He doesn't want India to talk to any other beloved. So whether it's Russia or whether it's anything else, he doesn't want his beloved to go and sit in another group like BRICS and start talking to them, start talking about currencies, talking about, oh, I love you also. I'm sorry, I'm a very possessive lover. I'm not going to let you do that. I think that's the kind of situation which is emanating here. He loves India. I love what Andrew said, 60-70% of the time he knows he cannot do without India. He needs India more than India needs him. I'm being very, very direct here. He knows from inside, but he's just trying to give these threats. Now, very important is we keep talking about these tariffs, but as I said in the beginning, I would like to reiterate that how many of these tariffs will actually culminate to reality, to the borders, has to be waited for. We must wait for time when these tariffs will actually go into effect. 1st August is the new Qayamat ki date now, which has been decided that 1st August is the final date. We don't even know if this is going to be the date or they'll still be extended. As for BRICS, BRICS, he said, if you read his statement, he said BRICS was sort of fading away. It had subdued, and a lot of people had started feeling that BRICS was probably calmed down group now. It's not as relevant because of India, China, Russia having different geopolitical interests, geopolitical groupings, and so on and so forth. I think what he forgot was, because he was the one who gave importance to BRICS now, and BRICS is back in action. His economic policies, geo-economic policies, is bringing BRICS back into action, because it is such unilateral decisions which compel other countries, emerging economies, and other countries to come together and find a solution to that. So I think what he's saying is contradicting within himself. He says he doesn't want BRICS to come up, but what he does, BRICS has to come into, groups like BRICS, I would say, have to be formed and have to be discussing all this. Otherwise, what is the solution? You cannot tolerate imperial colonialism, shall I say. Imperialism in an economic form cannot be tolerated by any country, for that matter, Megha.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me, sharing your views. We'll keep a close eye on what happens on that India-US trade deal. It is, of course, has been a long-drawn communication, negotiations. So will something really come of it? And we have already, of course, crossed the deadline. But what's in store for India and America with regards to our trade relations remains to be seen.